Suggestive title: A Peaceful Night. A desperate call. A wife collapsed at her husband's feet early Sunday morning, April 25, 2010, on quiet Minnehaha Avenue in St. Paul, Minnesota. The sun had barely risen, and the neighborhood was still bathed in the soft light of dawn. The trees swayed in the gentle breeze. The morning seemed uneventful except for one thing. At 1794 Minnehaha Avenue, the front door was ajar, only a few inches open, as if hesitating between keeping the peace or letting something in. No sound. No dog barking. No human voices, and then boom! A loud explosion shattered the silence. Less than a minute later, the police received two 911 calls, exactly 65 seconds apart. The first call came from Heidi Firkus, a young wife, her voice trembling. "Someone is trying to break into my house. Help me." Then, a loud bang, a broken scream, and then the signal disappeared. The second call came from her husband, Nick Firkus. "I've been shot. My wife. She's not breathing." When the police arrived at the scene, they found Nick sprawled on the kitchen floor, blood seeping through his pants. Nearby, Heidi was motionless. In the small house that had once been filled with memories of a young couple, there was only the smell of gunpowder, a shotgun, and an unexplained death. The first person to enter the scene described the atmosphere in the house as frozen in the moment of the crime. There were no signs of vandalism. Nothing had been knocked over, except for Heidi's body, lying with a bullet wound in her back. A shotgun lay in the doorway. Nick, the husband, who was treated for a wound to his left leg, said that an unknown intruder broke down the door, struggled with him, and the gun went off. The first bullet hit his wife. The second bullet hit him. The story sounded convincing. But investigators began to ask questions. If it had been a break-in, why hadn't anything been taken? If there had been a struggle, why was the room still neat and tidy, with no signs of a struggle? If Heidi had called 911 out of fear, why was she the one who ran downstairs first, not Nick, who was holding a gun? Confusion quickly gave way to suspicion. And that suspicion grew when the police learned that the house would be foreclosed on the next day. They were being evicted for failing to pay their debts the day before they were both forced to leave. Heidi was dead, and the only survivor, her husband. The crime took place in the early morning hours of April 25, 2010, in St. Paul, Minnesota. Heidi Firkus, 25, was found dead in her home, with a shotgun blast to the back. It was she who called 911, saying someone was trying to break in. Her husband, Nick Firkus, 27, also suffered a leg injury and said they were attacked by an unknown person as they tried to escape to the garage. At first, Nick was considered a survivor. But then, a series of mismatched details, suspicious crime scene signs, and Nick's own financial ruin gradually became clear. Perhaps there was no intruder in the house. Perhaps it was all a staged drama with blood and bullets. Why would a husband let his wife run ahead of him during a break-in when he was holding a gun? Who would be cruel enough to end a woman's life just a day before she was due to leave their home? And was this really a break-in? Or was it a murder plan hidden in the 65 seconds of silence between the two 911 calls? Heidi Firkus is the kind of woman who makes people fall in love with her. She is 25 years old, gentle, patient, and has a smile that shines like her name. Heidi works at a financial services firm, where she is always described as dedicated, punctual, and reliable. But the light in Heidi's eyes doesn't come from her work success alone. It stems from her strong religious faith, her belief in love, and her marriage to Nick Firkus, her high school sweetheart. She met Nick at church when Heidi was just a high school student. Nick is energetic, outgoing, and often plays music at services. They married in 2005, just a few years after their first met, and began building a home in the small house at 1794 Minnehaha Avenue, the house that became the crime scene. Heidi's family and friends say she was naively optimistic. She trusted her husband completely. That he would take care of the finances. That even if she was behind on rent, everything would be fine. She never doubted Nick. The most heartbreaking thing is, Heidi had no idea that the next day, her house would be foreclosed on. No one in her family or friends was told that Heidi was insolvent. She didn't pack her bags, didn't take time off from work, didn't make plans to leave. Because she didn't know, and because of that, she was unprepared. Unsuspecting. Unprepared for the death that was quietly creeping up behind her. Nick Firkus was the only survivor. He recounted that, around 6:30 that morning, the couple was awakened by the sound of someone turning the doorknob. Following their escape plan from the previous time the police mistook their house for their own, they decided to run to the garage to get in their car and escape. Nick held the double-barreled shotgun, and Heidi ran ahead. But when they went downstairs, Nick said the door was broken open, and a stranger rushed in and struggled with him. During the scuffle, the gun went off. The first bullet hit Heidi. The second bullet, whether accidental or intentional, went through Nick's left leg. However, from the beginning, the police saw many things wrong. Why was there a break-in without any signs of forced entry, broken locks, or furniture being disturbed? Why did Nick, the man with the gun, let his wife run downstairs first? Why were the bloodstains, traces of struggle, even bullet holes, inconsistent with Nick's story? The police had other theories. Maybe the intruder really existed and had gotten the gun in a split second, or Nick made up the whole story to cover up a crime, but they lacked solid evidence. Despite the many suspicious points in Nick's testimony, he stuck to his story, and after 3 hours of questioning, was released. No one had been arrested, Heidi was dead, and the last person with her was her husband. When investigators returned to the house on Minnehaha Avenue, they took in every detail. And the first thing that struck them, everything was as if there had never been a struggle. A table near the door, with a vase of flowers, cups, papers, was still intact. No blood in the area where the struggle was supposed to have taken place, no strange footprints, no glove marks, no DNA other than Nick's. One peculiarity, the bullet that hit Heidi traveled from the middle of the house to the door, which did not match Nick's description that she was shot right at the door when the bad guys broke in. Even Nick's wound was illogical. If he was shot during the struggle at the door, why did the bullet travel from back to front, hitting his leg from a low angle? There was only one possibility: he shot himself. The shotgun, the only murder weapon, also had only Nick's fingerprints. No third person had ever touched the gun. The only thing Nick left behind was a hole in his story. As the years passed, the case gradually quieted down. No one was arrested. Heidi's family still believed that justice would come. But it wasn't until 2019, when investigator Nicole Sipes got the case file back, that everything changed. Sipes found that every detail didn't add up. Why would an intruder strike just before the foreclosure? Why not take anything? Why only kill the wife? Sipes decided to do what no one else had done: ask the FBI to decode the audio from Heidi's 911 call. The result: no door opening. No struggle. No stranger's voice, just Heidi. Running, gasping. Then bang, a gunshot. And silence. What's more, Heidi called 911 before Nick said she was attacked. There was no sign of a third party, When the police checked the legal history, they discovered Nick hid all information about the bank foreclosure. All the papers, notices, signatures, all had Nick's name on them. Heidi had no idea that the next day, she would have no home to return to. The only person who knew was her husband. Nick Firkus had been loved by the community, the gentle husband, the moral friend, the survivor who had cried over his wife's body. But it was all a mask, a veil covering the truth. He was the one who planned to kill Heidi. When the police issued a warrant for Nick's arrest in 2021, 11 years after Heidi's death, they found a look of devastation in his eyes. And more importantly, the person who gave them the final clue was Nick's second wife, Rachel. Rachel said she had received a tax warning letter, exactly like Heidi's situation back then. She had suspected her first wife's death, and Nick's lies convinced her, if he could lie so easily, then killing his wife was not impossible. In a secret recording, Rachel asked Nick directly, "Would you kill me like you killed Heidi?" And he did not deny it. On January 25, 2023, Nick Firkus walked into the courtroom, his face no longer the innocent one of the past, but a man exhausted after 11 years of living a lie. The trial lasted for weeks. The prosecutor asserted Nick killed Heidi to cover up the fact that they were about to be evicted, because he had failed to provide for his family. The evidence presented stunned the jury. There was no stranger's DNA on the gun or the door. There was no sign of a break-in. There was no reason for a robber to kill someone without taking property. And most importantly, Nick lied about his finances, hiding from his wife that the house was about to be foreclosed on the next day. Heidi's family sat behind him, silent but determined. Her mother, her face haggard from years of waiting for justice, said through tears, "My daughter trusted the wrong person. And she paid with her life." After 4 hours of deliberation, the jury returned a verdict: Nick Firkus guilty of first-degree murder, sentence, life in prison without parole. Nick maintained his defense: "I am innocent. I did not kill my wife. I swear it with my last breath." But when the prison door closed, no one stood by him anymore. Heidi died too young, 25, before she could become a mother, before she could live a full life. She was the first to die, but not the only one to be hurt. Her family, her parents, her siblings, carried invisible wounds for decades. They once thought their daughter died in an accident, because of a break-in. But then they had to face the horrifying truth: their daughter was murdered by the husband she trusted the most. The house where Heidi used to live is now sealed, abandoned, and cold. Neighbors passing by still tell the story as a warning to those who believe that tragedies never happen in this neighborhood. For Nick's second wife, Rachel, the shock was no less. She had given birth to 3 children with him, trusted him, and rebuilt her family. "But then I had to say, I lived with a murderer for almost a decade without knowing it. And justice? 11 years too late, but at least, it has come." The case of Heidi Firkus is not just a personal tragedy. It is a stark warning about silence in marriage. Heidi did not know about her financial situation. She had no right to know. She trusted, and the price of absolute trust was her life, financial pressure, honor, and saving face. Nick would rather kill his wife than accept the shame of losing his house and going bankrupt. Society invisibly creates expectations that drive people crazy because of their pride, fake kindness. The most brutal killers are sometimes the kindest people in the eyes of their neighbors, acquaintances, and even their wives. This case is not the only one. How many other Heidis are there, gentle, trusting women, living in seemingly peaceful marriages, but not knowing that death is at their knees? Heidi died because she trusted. She trusted her husband. She trusted love. She believed that home was the safest place. But sometimes, The people you love the most are the ones who push you into hell. There are pains that are not expressed in tears, but in the silence of an entire house. If only one person had spoken up sooner, would the tragedy have happened?